So as well as the backgrounds, I need to cut out some fusible stabiliser for each of the blocks, 6.5 inch square, and then I'm going to fuse that onto the back of my fabric. Before I put my bird on my background, I want to mark the place for the legs. So I'm putting my ruler on where the line goes, and I'm using a light pencil. So I'm going there and there. I'm just going to mark the lines for the bird's legs on this black. So I've got my plan stuck down. I'm just taping the fabric to it. Take this line and extend it out. That way I can see where my lines need to be for my bird's legs. Before you stitch the legs, make sure you've got your stabiliser on the back of your fabric, because otherwise you're going to get a bit of a mess on the front. And also get yourself a practice piece and check your stitch before you start sewing. And I've selected a satin stitch. At the moment it's got a width of 3 and a distance between the stitches of 0.6. Obviously different machines are going to have different options available, so it's a case of finding something that works for you. So I'm going to try this out on my scrap of fabric. And that's pretty good. That's quite open. I might just close it up a little bit. So the gap between the stitches, I'm going to just reduce that down and try 0.4. That's better. So that's really nice and close together. Let's have a look at that with the bird. Actually, it matches his beak nicely, doesn't it? I might just reduce that to a 2.5 width. There we go. So my settings are 2.5 width and 0.4 spacing between my threads. If you don't have that on your machine, just do a zigzag and get the zigzag as close together as possible. Or you can do a straight line down and then a straight line back up, and make a few straight lines. So it's going to be a lot easier to sew this before I put my applique on. I've got my lines marked, but this side is going to be underneath the bird and this side is going to be in the seam allowance, so I can start a little bit before and finish a little bit after. So there's my first leg. Now I'm going to line up for my second one. And there we are. So I've sewn right into the seam allowance, and I'm just going to take off these loose threads. Get yourself a permanent black marker and draw a nice circle in the centre. So that's what I'm doing with mine, just colouring that in. And of course, if you mess it up, you just cut yourself another little eye. So there's one. And so now to position my bird, I'm going to place my background piece on so that I can see where the bird is. So this works really well for the light backgrounds. And then on this one I'm going to put my green bird, place him there, and he's covering up the leg stitches there. Then I need his eye, and that is going there. his beak, which goes there, and his wing, which is the orange one. So he's now ready to go and fuse. Now of course when it comes to doing the black one, my light box is not going to work too well. So I've done my light background, so now I'm going to take this off and get my paper scissors. Just fold there, make a little cut. So I'm going to cut all this around here, the outside of my bird. Okay, so now I can use this as a template and get my bird and place him, put him in place like that. And the beak. Stay down beak. And there he is. So he's all ready to fuse. And now we can do the black one. The beak's going to go on like that. So that's close enough there. So just be careful when you take that off. So now you can carry this like that over to the iron and press everything down. And there he is, ready to be sewn around. So finally we're ready to do some stitching around the applique. I always think of this as being a big job, but actually this is the final stage, and once it's done the block's going to be almost ready. So I haven't sewn the sections together yet. I'm going to do each one of them individually. So I think last time I was using my walking foot attachment with this very open foot. This is the one that I use on my ordinary foot, and since that's on, that's what I'm going to use. This is my Janome F2 foot. Gives me lots of visibility. So we're going to pull up that bottom thread and keep everything nice and neat and tidy. And then take both the top and the bottom thread, push them under the foot. And I'm checking that I'm on the outside of my stitch. So that's going to go down on the outside onto the black. Put down, needle down. Before you do it, either look back and see what stitch width and length you used before, or do yourself a little practice piece to make sure your settings are how you want them. And then off we go. I'm just turning every few stitches. And I'm thinking about where the needle's going every time. Forward, left, right, forward, left, right, forward. Now if I went left now, it would take a big bite into my black. So I'm going to turn. I'm just going to turn this much. Left, right, forward, okay. And then I'm going to turn a bit more so that I know that my next move, which is left, is going to go on to blue, left, right. Now I can turn this way. It's going to go forward, left, right, forward, left, right. So you just want to be aware of where the needle is going to go next, and to make sure that it's going along black and then biting into blue. And now we're coming up to the end. Forward, left, right, forward, left, right. So now I'm right at the edge of the beak, and I'm just going to do a locking stitch, and then lift up my needle, hold onto that and pull, and then cut off enough so that I can then go and sew those through to the back like we did last time. And I'll do that before I stitch around the beak. Now for the beak and for the wing, you can start at the tip and then go around and end at the tip, and that way you're not having to turn around that point. So I've used the needle to take these stitches through to the back, and just going to tie a knot. So I've got the 2 threads around my finger and thumb, bring this raw end round inside, use a needle, or here I'm using my seam ripper to hold it to the surface, pull, and there we go. So I'm going to start at the tip of the wing and draw up my thread from the bottom. So I've drawn my thread up, put my 2 threads behind, hand turn the needle down to where I want it. This is still on the outside of the stitch. And this is one benefit of keeping your stitch width fairly narrow, is that it won't take huge bites out at points into where you don't want it to go. Now coming up to the end, so my wing is getting narrower, forward, left, right, forward. If you do find that you've taken a stitch in where you don't want to, just get a needle and you can undo that stitch by hand and then sew the ends in. So with a tiny piece like this, I'm going to have to stop and turn fairly frequently. Quite a big turn here, so let's do 1 stitch and then turn again. So there we go, there's the beak done, and then finally we're going to go around the eye, and I'm going to drop my stitch right down so it's really tiny. At the moment I've got a 1.2 and a 1.2. And there is my completed bird. So now I need to stitch around the other 2 birds, and then when that's done, I'm going to join them in a row. If you'd like to, you can tear away the stabilizer once you've done all your stitching. So what I tend to do is either get my seam ripper or a pin and just score it. I think the one I'm using is more of a cutaway, and the one we sell in the shop is a tear away. So then you can take all this off and just be careful around your stitches. Put your finger on your stitches so that it doesn't pull them, and you can get rid of as much of that as you can. And then once you've done that, we're then going to be sewing the 3 blocks together with 1/4 inch seams.